Hi. So I am Imogen Nestorenko, and I'm a professional acrobat and student physiotherapist. And today we're going to go through a case study talking about circus travelers and how it is that physiotherapists can meet their needs. So obviously we're going to go through a hypothetical case study in order to understand the potential barriers and to be given tools to working with these communities. Okay, now Bicep Tina is a 28-year-old aerialist who's been on tour for 6 months. She also does acrobatics, and she's been hired with a partner for hand-to-hand and solo aerial straps. She's usually living in Portugal, but she uses a living van when working. Now, this will be important to how we adapt for her. And in a culture which declares you do not leave circus until you're in a coffin, which is true, she will be unable to take time off work without losing the contract entirely. This would also cause her acro partner to lose out on money and work. Moreover, the failure to meet the contractual requirements of the tour can mean she will lose out on future work. Face-to-face follow-ups are not possible given that she's on tour. So there's quite lots of complexity there in terms of where she is with the culture. You can see already that why it is that service performers have less access to healthcare if we don't, if we're not in one spot regularly, and also if we're constantly working our bodies in very extreme ways. A lot of circus performers will actually self-manage entirely with their injuries. So this onset was 3 weeks ago, and she's noted clicking and clunking about 6 weeks ago. That's in her right shoulder underneath the scapula. The pain goes from the supraspinatus down to the deltoid tuberosity. She says that right arm is much weaker than her left now, which is very unusual because this is a dominant hand, and within circus arts, that dominant arm is known to be a lot stronger, as sort of general knowledge. So progression, it began with low levels of pain but has worsened, and she believes that pain is normal, as do most circus performers. The acro partner has persuaded Tina to see the physio, which again is quite congruent with how these things go down, to be honest with you. So she has neck stiffness but hasn't declared any red flags, and she's got no bilateral signs or symptoms. She hasn't had any previous investigations, as I said, entirely self-managed. Aches more in the morning when and waking up at night, and she wakes if she rolls onto it. So it's not a pleasant period of pain for her, and particularly as well if she's waking while she's doing shows, which is full on. She has been self-treating with massage, stretching, tiger balm. All performance tends to irritate it, and she's finding driving between shows is painful. Often there will be long drives between shows, or rather between locations where shows take. She's had 4 months left to tour, and with no to little to rehabilitation time or rest. That's not going to be a thing for her. So she's got no signs of muscle wasting, no sulcus sign. This is ruling out dislocations, not a step down sign again. So bruising on the neck is linked to acrobatics. Again, bruising in circus performance is really common. You need to find out why that bruising is there. Burn marks, also really common. You need to find out why they're there. Scapular dyskinesis was observed as negative, but some shuddering movement around the inferior angle. There's tenderness as well around the anterior aspect and superior aspects of the GHJ, glandular humeral joint. And, anterior posterior glides show large movements down the posterior direction. So, due to physical, abilities, you may need to choose different tests, i.e. Apsley's may not be reliable as the bear hug and stuff like this, as she's already got increased range of motion, higher pain tolerance, and is more likely to compensate with other muscles. So one of the advantages about using the bear test is that it helps reduce compensation within other muscles. So what is this human doing? Right, well, let's have a little look. So this isn't actually Bicep Tina. This is Maria Shevchenko. And she is a straps artist working at the Circus Festival Italy. This is what Bicep Tina does. So we go up, dorsal hook, straight out. We're going to spin a bit. Obviously, that rotation is going to add more force in. Straight into the full dorsal hook, meat hook. And then you'll see her flip round, boom, again into that dorsal hook. So it's kind of not surprising. She's got a cuff tear. And that's it. Grab the leg. You can tell that she is a Eastern European circus performer because she'll put the splits everywhere. And this is me speaking as an Eastern European performer. We do this. So let's look at that dorsal hook a little bit closer, because movement analysis, again, is going to be incredibly important with these populations. Standard tests might not work, and at the end of the day, movement is what they do for a living, and it is absolutely within our job description to go beyond what people think is humanly possible. So when prescribing exercise, we do then need to consider both the rehabilitation and preventative work. Multi-level spinal injuries are actually very common, as described by Monroe. And we should give a conditioning that strengthens the facet joints and the intervertebral joints. Reason being is because when she's in this dorsal hook, spine is on the spine on the right side, or the gravity-dependent side, I would say. These facet joints are closed up. The rhomboids are retracting in, and the whole thing's kind of being stabilized by the subscapularis, which is sort of pretty much sticking the whole thing together, rhomboids, and kind of being balanced. It is like a balance, really, across the iliac crest. So there's a lot that goes into this balance. And as we can see, that supraspinatus is going to become gravity dependent. It's out of range. It's antagonist in this one. But, if we think about that force that will be going through her, that's quite a lot on these little structures by here, isn't it, really? So cuff rehabilitation should take her active daily living into account and her work demands into account. So, she's heavy lifting, she's driving, she is working on her shoulder all the time, and actually she's still got to drive and sleep and eat and pick up things. And, generally there'll be families who'll come on tour, so you might have to do some babysitting at some point. There's lots of little things that don't get seen, Additionally, moving caravans, actually, it can also be one. And all of these things. And actually, circus performance can be quite stressful. Sometimes people like to stow thrones at your caravan and call you a gypsy after your show, so it's not great. Right. So, diagnoses. Bicep Tina has partial rotator cuff tear with myogenic pain in a subclavicular supraspinatus and bicep. So we've tested the cervical involvement of Sperling's, which should have been that way to go. That was all there. Tested with Sperling's. And we just need to basically make sure that she's not going to be getting any more injuries. So, her occupation and culture risk is overworking on the shoulder, not seeing the importance of prioritizing her injury over the show. Really common. Again, you do not leave the circus until you're in a coffin. That phrase is actually one that's used very regularly, very internationally. It is a common phrase. Nelly the elephant does not exist. She tried, she failed. Anyway, loss of personal identity, really big, huge thing. It's a quite a heavy blow, actually. The lack of education around abnormal levels of pain, like we just believe it's normal, and we will just push through the pain. We are somewhat a little bit masochistic like that. And receives a lack of employment support, so the dysregulation within the circus industry can have its advantages, and here it does not have an advantage. It's definitely a setback. But there's insurance and stuff for that. So, if you are working with a touring circus artist, they guarantee you they'll have insurance, otherwise they wouldn't have been hired. So re-injuries are common, with soft minor tissues being the most susceptible. And the most common places are the spine and the shoulder. So it's not that uncommon, and given I've chosen this particular skill and this particular move to really highlight that. So spine injuries are exceptionally common, with 33% being multi-level, and as a result, we need to focus on prevention as well as rehabilitation. Again, that's the Monroe thing. So excessive dynamic forces, if we're looking at those transitions between the static moves she does, that's going to put her more risk of re-injury. And, she needs to know that the risk of being unable to return to full performance levels if she doesn't manage it properly. So, this person in this study have found out that actually about half of those professionals who underwent shoulder surgery weren't able to get to their full potential post-surgery. So exercise prescription. This is the idea. Rehabilitation is right at the top here. This is the main stuff we're going to be doing. So lifting the hand off, lift off with the bands. We've obviously done this before. We might want to add weights and bands to this as well. We need to be loading this in a way that we don't do with other patients, because one, she's stronger, and two, look what she's actually doing with it. So stirring the pot with bands, but behind the back. This is more about that control. So if you look, obviously, her entrance and exits from that dorsal hook are quite dynamic, quite high force. So actually, that control needs to be there more so than anything else. Finally, weighted adduction whilst inverted. So basically, someone's hanging off the backs of their knees, and they've got, their arms above their head with some weights in it, and they're going to try and press their arms down towards their pockets. Now look at the reps. I've given her high reps. I've given her already the ACSM standards. And admittedly, I just started with strength to begin with on the subscapularis exercises because it's injured. But actually, genuinely, if they're able to take it, we need to be taking them to that full scale endurance. We need to be pushing them because that's what their body demands of them. Again as well, the recommended prevented exercises would be side start extensions. So you're in side start, feet are together. You do not have 2 feet on the floor with this one. We do not do that here. She needs that balance. And then pulling the arm overhead and just rotating towards the backside. And that getting that shoulder involvement and getting that spine involvement. And it's a balance exercise, just as the dorsal hook is a balance exercise. Lateral crunches. So yeah, obviously you're working your obliques. And the saw exercise where your feet are just slightly sat on the floor, straddle, feet slightly hip width apart, just beyond it. And then rotating that body with your arms in abduction and your hands facing forward like a scarecrow. And then kind of like sawing off your little toe. Happy to do a demonstration. Right. Education, rest days, there need to be rest days, and actually telling her to avoid those deep stretches and micro tears. Right, so I know that we normally say you can stretch any day. My rationality behind this is most people's stretching isn't circus stretching. So like 15 seconds worth of stretching, yeah, but going deep into 60-second stretches when she's already got micro tears and rotator cuff and it's already under loads of strain, maybe let's give that muscle a rest and a time to knit itself back together. Again, changing technique. So do not keep pushing to long arm when basing hand to hand. That's this thing here. Keeping it short arm. That's going to change how it's done. It's just going to be working more of the bicep there, hence Bicep Tina. And it will help stabilize that shoulder in general when she's lower. Obviously, center of gravity is lower, but she can rest it on her arm, and there's other things that will help with that. Ideally, she wouldn't be doing it at all, but that's culturally not what you're going to get. So transfer major straps move to the opposite arm if appropriate and possible. If not, adapt the routine. So again, you might need to see her videos for this and spend some time talking with her. So that might be a virtual follow-up, which is done, within the next 2 weeks, next week, or whatever it is. And do not go back to the original routine for 6 weeks or until pain's 2 out of 10 when working on it. Really important. They really need that pain education because we don't have that recognition. There's some people who think that we need a whole new model of pain to help people understand how it is we perceive pain. And asking someone whether or not she can drive to reduce her overall working. Now this could be her acro partner, it could be the rigger, it could be anybody. But she will have if she's on tour, she will have a team around her. They are useful. They are your crew. So we might not have many regulations in our industry, but we've got a lot of good people that are willing to have our back because we do not have regulations. Now, we're not going to get ice in a van, so wet cold towel to apply after the shows when painful. Using the massage gun after shows or getting a massage. She also has an acro partner that can do that. There's sometimes we are not a culture which is adverse to massaging our friends for platonic reasons. Like, that's really chill with us. Continuing the use of tiger balm, don't take that away from her. She'll probably need that. And again, just a bit of education around the over-the-counter sort of stuff is really important because, again, we think pain is normal. And actually, we're encouraged not to take painkillers during training so we can see when we've injured ourselves. That is still taught today in circus school, and it's only until I started doing physiotherapy that I learned different. But we will just push through the pain. Like I said, we're incredibly masochistic. Right, so the plan offer virtual appointments. They are actually quite decent, as found in the study during COVID of students in Australia. This is something that I do in my own practice when I'm training with somebody and they've gone away for a bit and I need to see their improvement. I'll do a movement analysis from a distance. That is really important. You can assess the shoulder function, actually get to see it in action, which is doing the thing that it needs to be doing. Now, when it comes to retesting pain, strength, A1, bad tactics, there's obviously difficulties if we're doing that online, but again, you can ask an acro partner to step in, and they probably will, because at the end of the day, it's her acro partner's safety that's on the line as well. That's probably why they made them go to the physio in the first place. So check with occupational pressures to return to full-scale performance routines. If she needs more time, consider writing a fit note. And just bear in mind, sometimes you can have a contract for years. On one day you sprain your ankle, they will never hire you again if you cannot get out there and work on your sprained ankle. So that needs to be really good and really convincing, because for this person, if they lose a whole touring show, say the tour's repeated, it's not just lost out on a job, it's not just lost out a couple of £100, that's thousands of pounds and lots of hours trying to recuperate the new job that they've lost. It's severely detrimental. It's not just you're missing a day of work. And that needs to be discussed with them really gently, really openly, and with a lot of compassion and understanding, because this is this person's entire life, entire identity, and it might seem a bit unusual to people, and it might seem a little bit, oh, why are you doing this? But actually, when you're in it, there's a lot of reasons why you do it. And there's not another world like it. And to step outside of it has its problems too, because we are a different culture, and we're not trained to sit at a desk. We're not trained to do this. We're trained to be circus performers. So an introduction to prevention exercises more formally, again, that's really important. And so with circus performers, you're going to get people who do their exercises. You just need to educate them on where their limits are, because we are told to be limitless. And for the most part of it, we are quite successful with that as far as humans can go. So, conclusion: Bicep Tina has a partial cuff tear, which risks further damage if not managed appropriately. Circus performers do not share the same typical markers of sex, a difference, pain threshold, approach, and activities of daily living to others. We just don't. We just don't. Hence, also, I've had the picture of Bicep Tina lifting the guy above her head. This wasn't drawn randomly. This is actually a sketch of someone I know. I just wanted to protect their identity, but that's actually quite common. So we do not have the same markers, and there's little research and even lesser quality due to the small populations and few opportunities to research them. Obviously, the professionals are moving around all the time. Most of the research is actually being done on the students, because they stay in one place and generally will have physios on site, constantly. They're very unlikely to stop any shows to heal, but they're more likely to adapt their movements and self-manage. They need really good education for us to monitor ourselves for safety reasons, really good. It has to be understood that this is very much like you're giving this person, a fishing rod to go fishing. They will find out ways to self-manage that people won't even think of. They're quite inventive. Anyway, so we need to prescribe preventative and rehabilitative exercises to reduce the risk of readmission or re-injury, in this case, re-tearing. And this should be mixed in with her existing conditioning, because we also need to watch her routine and discuss where and what can be adapted to keep her safe. We can suggest wet towels, creams, and self-management for pain relief. Okay. Well, this is where we're at as well. So these are my references. Again, most of these are circus references. Obviously, I have done some background reading into shoulders. But as well, there's another limitation for this, that actually most of this studies I was able to read were in English. However, French is considered the language of circus. What would be useful is if, given that circus is an international community, if the research that we have is translated into Chinese, Spanish, Russian, English, and French. That way we can reach the most people. There's that would be very good because we kind of need it. Anyway, with that, thank you very much.